today's video is the second video in my 2026 goal setting series, and today the focus is going to be on intentions for 2026. So stay tuned. Hey guys, I'm Tracy and I want to welcome you back to my channel. I want to thank you all so much for tuning in today. And today I'm going to be continuing on with my 2026 goal setting prep work. And I am going to be looking ahead to 2026 and figuring out what my intentions are, maybe even what I want to let go of. Putting that to paper. So I do have some questions that I've already put in this notebook. We will go over that momentarily. But first, I want to chat a little bit about the first part, which was part of the first video. That was the reflections and assessment. I did that a week ago now. And yeah, that was a pretty big, I think, step in this process, especially for me, because I have never done that many assessments at one time. Because yes, I did quite a few. So when I talk about assessments, I'm kind of talking about like evaluations in these life categories. So what I did in that video is I first did kind of like where I thought I was, just generally, looking at these categories. Then I broke down these categories based on like what I would consider subcategories that are within each of these categories and rated myself there. Then what I did is I took an average and then marked that. I just kind of wanted to see the difference. Then what I did is I did a post reflection and I actually did the assessment questions that come along with the Moxie Life Wheel of Life assessment system. I guess that's what you call it, assessment system or what have you. And wanted to see what happened there. I also did some post-reflection kind of scores here just to see if they differed. But I just kind of wanted to see how everything compared. And there were differences. I mean, and that was over the course of like a 40-minute video. There were several differences. Like in financial, I have 3 different scores for the 3 different types of assessments I did. So that was pretty interesting. I think I learned a lot from the assessments. I also learned I don't love all the questions that are on the actual Moxie Life assessment. But it was kind of interesting to say the least. And then, of course, like I said, I did do some questions. I also have come back to this notebook over the course of the week. I think I've visited it twice. Once I filled in some of the questions that I had trouble with answering initially, I needed to think a little bit more on them. And then I just did some free journaling or just wrote like no journal prompts, just kind of wrote my overall kind of feelings about 2025, just life in general, things that I need to keep in mind when thinking ahead and things of that nature. And, there were a few things that kind of stood out. One of the things was something that I've kind of realized more recently, and it doesn't really have to do with the types of goals I set. It just has to do with my goal setting process in general. So I am currently using a Moxie Life planner. I've been using it for like 3 months now. And with the Moxie Life planner, actually I have it right here. There are these weekly action steps before each week. What I have found is I am much more successful and I enjoy this system much more if I don't refer to my goals when setting these weekly actions. I know that is the intention of it. I know that's how you're supposed to do it. It's the whole point of like following through with your goals. But I have just been looking at each category and then just writing things that I want to get done that week within each category. I have found that they have aligned very well with my goals just because my goals haven't really been that like large and difficult. They're just basic goals at this point. So I don't know if I have any goals about learning something new or something like that. I might have to try a little bit harder to incorporate it into my weekly action steps. But I have really enjoyed just writing to-dos within that category and not being so goal focused when it comes to my action steps. So I did like note that in my reflections because that might be something that I want to take into the new year just because I feel like it's just made me more productive overall and help me possibly improve these scores in these life categories, even though I'm quote unquote, not focusing on those monthly, I didn't set monthly goals for December, but focusing on those monthly or quarterly goals. So I'm trying to see how that works. I'm still going to set goals for, the year, or not really goals, but more focus areas for the year. But just kind of thinking about what I want to do to improve these life categories on just a week by week basis has been really, really good for me. They don't really change that much week to week, but they could. Like I said, I've only been in that planner for 3 months, and I've only really done this kind of regular to-dos for a month. So there really hasn't been much room for change, but just something I thought about. And I did put that in my reflections. The other thing, like I said, I don't want to share too much of my reflections because I do get personal, even though some of these don't feel like they would be personal. I have been doing a lot of self-reflecting, like looking inward. So it is kind of personal as far as my answers go. But the other thing I did, and I did this a few days ago actually, is I wrote each of the categories on one of my notes pages and then actually reflected on each of those categories individually, because the questions that I included in my reflection section were just kind of overall questions, just about life, like challenges, I faced, maybe successes I had, what I learned about myself and stuff like that. But I wanted to kind of get more in depth about the categories, especially because I have been enjoying looking at the categories individually each week. And that was also pretty eye-opening. I say it was eye-opening. It wasn't really anything new that came about, but it definitely got me thinking a little bit differently as I start thinking more and more about my goals. So that really did help with the reflections. I just kind of wanted to throw that out there just in case you were doing like a reflection exercise where there were questions involved and you felt like it did not work for you. Maybe you can just journal generally about the year and then maybe look at life categories, whether they are the life categories that are already set by some goal setting system or whether or not they are just life categories that you have created for yourself or subcategories about life, kind of see if that leads somewhere. All right, so now I'm going to jump into intentions. This is probably not going to be as big of a discussion just because, that's all we're doing. Like I said, I'm not doing any additional assessments or anything like that. But it's pretty much going to be the same concept. I'm going to go ahead again and I am going to just journal. I will probably blur it out, but I will do a voiceover where I will go through and read what the questions are. And I may give some of my insight or how I took on answering these questions. Again, I find that my initial review of these questions, I have not reviewed these questions until right now. I mean, I did write these questions 2 weeks ago or 2.5 weeks ago, but then it was out of sight, out of mind. So this is me kind of seeing them almost for the first time. So I don't know if I'm going to get complete answers right now anyway. Again, my plan is to revisit this in a few days, and then probably a few days before I take on the next step, which is brainstorming. So yeah, let me go ahead and start answering some of these questions, and then we will come back and kind of chat about some other things like word of the year. Okay, so let's go over these questions and then I'll kind of summarize some of the answers that I gave for those. So the first one was, how do I want to feel in the new year? And mostly the recurring theme was, I really want to feel motivated. I mentioned previously that was kind of something that I felt like I struggled with in 2025. So that is something that I really, really want to focus on, is kind of finding that motivation in 2026. What am I excited about for the new year? There are a lot of things there. I'm hoping to take a trip in 2026, a big trip. So that is obviously something that I'm excited about. I'm really excited about some new creative projects that I plan to start involving memory keeping and stuff like that. So, and I'm excited about a few other things that I won't go into too much detail about. But yeah, it kind of made me really look forward to the new year. What am I worried about? So I have anxiety, so I worry a lot. It was too many things to list in this small space. But one of the things I kind of noted here is I worry about worrying. or I worry about being worried. Yeah, I think those of you that probably have anxiety also worry about that. You're like, oh no, I don't want to worry about this and I don't want to worry about that. Yeah. So that is something. Also, my health. I've always been kind of concerned about my health. I don't have bad health. I just need to take better care of my health. So that's something that's always on my mind. And I need to be more motivated in 2026 to fix that. What do I want or need to say yes to? Being outside of my comfort zone. There's a few other things I said there, but that is kind of the big one. Is like I really need to get outside of my comfort zone. I need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. There we go. What do I need to say no to? Staying at home. I mean, that's something I really want to say yes to, is staying at home, but I really need to say no to that. And negativity. This year, I will be more social, positive, optimistic. I want to carry that into the new year, and healthy. And this year, I will embrace change and the unknown. That kind of gets back to being comfortable with being uncomfortable. So you can kind of see a little bit of a trend there. All right. That actually went a lot quicker than my reflections. I felt like I was just like, bam, bam, bam. I just knew the answer to everything just right there. It was super easy. Let me know if that happens to you. Like you struggle a little bit more with the reflections, but like the looking ahead or intentions come pretty easy. So yeah, hopefully I was able to go through a lot of stuff over my voiceover. I didn't really get too personal as I thought. There definitely was some things that I need to work on and things of that nature that are more on the personal level. But I have some optimism about 2026. So I think I'll just wrap up like, what do I need to focus on? I put health, socialization, time management, positivity, and fun. I mean, there are other things I need to work on, but these are things that I kind of really want to focus on. And even though I have a whole long list of to-dos that are going to be popping up every single day, every single week, I want to prioritize this. And that's the to-dos, that's where time management comes in. But, I want to kind of make time for fun, make time for socialization, always think positive. And of course, my health does have to be kind of front and center, as it always should have been, and it always has been. I just have not been very successful this year. There's just been a lot of things going on this year that's just kind of, I don't want to say put that on the back burner, but just kind of had me not really making the healthiest decisions. We'll just leave it at that. So now that that is done, I will say, just thinking about reflections, I have been thinking about my word of the year. And going through these questions, I feel like I'm on the right track when it comes to what type of thing I want for word of the year. I will say ChatGPT, very, very helpful resource when it comes to word of the year. You can literally just type, help me find a word of the year. I'll ask you some questions, and you can ask some additional questions, and I'll kind of refine some things for you. I did that 5 or 6 times in this past week when I was doing my reflections. And there's been some things that have come up. So just generally some of the things, of course, this is what I want to focus on as well. Oh, I also want to focus on confidence. I have to put that on there. I really don't want to put more than 5, but I have to put that on there. So yeah, I just kind of want to focus. I mean, obviously as part, of the new year, we always want to improve ourselves, but I think one of my biggest struggles with 2025 is I felt like when I hit a brick wall, I just stopped instead of trying to go through it. Additionally, I really kind of just lacked any kind of motivation, which we all go through that time and time again. I just feel like the time that I was unmotivated just seemed abnormally long for me personally. I just could not get out of that funk for months on end when it comes to motivation. I hope I can find that to come 2026. I will say planner setups and stuff like that has got me a little motivated. We'll see if it can help me get motivated in the health department, but I also need to get motivated in other areas of my life. I obviously want to start and work on my confidence and just thinking more positively about myself. That's always been a struggle. I'm sure it is with a lot of people, but that's something I really want to work on because I do feel like that holds me back in other areas, such as like socialization and things of that nature. The other thing that I was kind of thinking of, and it completely just went out of my brain, but it was right there at the tip of my tongue. Let me think. Hold on. Now I know. I just had to look back at my intentions. I tell you, man, brain fog is no joke. I was like, wait a minute. It was right there. One of the things that, like, doing my reflections that I kind of thought about, just kind of seeing a trend, is I am comfortable with being content. And you know, it's not a bad thing to be content, but I no longer just want to be content. I want to push for being more than content. So that is something really big that I want to take on this year, which is why I put, like, you know, fun, positivity, confidence, socialization. I feel like that is kind of in that kind of realm. So when I was talking about, you know, talking to Chat GPT, because I guess, you know, we're having a little conversation, so it feels like we're chatting. Some of the words that was recommended was like empower, ascend, which I don't really know. I mean, that means like to rise or what have you, which I guess it could be fitting. I think I just like the word. I think it's a really cool word, and it'll be a really cool word for the year. But I don't know if it's quite what I'm looking for. Evolve. Nourish, which I feel like could be very fitting because, you know, nourish yourself as far as like health, but you also want to nourish your mind and like nourish your self-confidence and things of that nature. Open, fearless, fortify, brave. And there's one that I'm going to hold off on. I'll share that in a moment. I will say brave. I'm leaning against that one only because I feel like it does kind of summarize what I want to be next year. But my word of the year was it a couple years ago was courage. It didn't go so well. Yeah, it was like 3 years ago now. It was courage. I didn't really try to apply that as much as I could have. And then 2 years ago, it was now. And then last year, it was optimism. And I will say, I really did strive to like implement that in my life in some way, shape, or form. Of course, it did not, I wasn't optimistic 24/7, but I was more optimistic than usual. I will say that. And I think it did have something to do with me focusing more on that last year, or this year still. But yeah, so I feel like that was a really good word for me. Now was also a good word for me last year in 2024. I felt like I could have done better when it comes to that. And it was me just not wanting to put things off, go ahead and doing things like now, being in the moment, stuff like that, which also could be another great word for this year. The other word that it was like one of the last words that Chat GPT recommended to me. And I am actually leaning toward this. And it's kind of strange because it's not what you think of when you think of word of the year, but optimism really wasn't either, is breakthrough. And I think that's going to be my word of the year. That's where I'm leaning. I'm still going to think on it because I want to do a little bit more kind of thinking about my intentions. But I am thinking about breakthrough just because I think it kind of encompasses a lot. I think even when I just was explaining what I'm looking forward to or issues that I've had, I was talking about like in 2025, I felt like when I hit a brick wall, I just kind of retreated and I just need to break through that. But I feel like I put these barriers up in all areas of my life, mainly due to fear and things of that nature as well. So I feel like that's why I'm leaning toward that. You know, I really like ascend. That just sounds so good. But I'm leaning toward this. I mean, fearless still, but that's also very close to courage. And I don't think I'm there yet. I don't think I'm there yet. I feel like that could be something that I focus on later, and maybe I change my word up at some point throughout the year, but this is kind of where I'm leaning. So I just want to think on it before I commit, but that is where I'm leaning. I figured you know, we're talking about intentions. Let's just chat about my word of the year. I'm not going to have this big reveal. We're just going to chat about it as part of this process. I feel like that's okay, right? But I'll still, like, once I commit to it, I'll do like a fun page in my planner and kind of define what that means to me. But I am going to think more on that. And I really want to kind of commit to my word of the year before I start brainstorming. And, you know, that's going to be next week. If I can't commit, I think I do have a good enough kind of focus area when it comes to my word of the year, what I want to focus on. So I feel like I'm in a good spot as far as being able to go ahead and start the brainstorming and thinking about these categories in terms of what I want to kind of focus on next year in one word. That's one of the reasons why I do want to settle on one, because I feel like it's going to help guide these categories when it comes to brainstorming. So yeah, that's it for this one. So not as in depth as last week's, but that is fine. Next week is going to be some brainstorming. I'm still not sure how I'm going to do my goals this year, but I still want to go through the same process because this is a notebook that's going to go with me. It's going to be with my planner this entire year. I did order a new planner cover, which by the time this video goes out, you might have already seen it. I don't know yet. But I plan on keeping this in the planner cover so I can refer to it because, like I said, I think things change, or I know things change weekly, monthly, quarterly. So I want to be able to refer to this to maybe give myself new ideas. I might come up with some focus areas for, you know, the first, what I think is going to be for the entire year. And then maybe they're only kind of what I want to focus on the first quarter. And I won't know that until the second quarter comes. And I'm like, okay, these no longer kind of pertain to what I want to accomplish this year. So that's why I want to keep this with my actual planner. So yeah, my brainstorming is going to kind of be all over the place just with that in mind, because I might need to refer to the mind map or the brainstorm or the brain dump or whatever we want to call it in the future, like, you know, 4 months down the road when quarter 2 hits, and I want to reevaluate what I'm focusing on as far as my quote unquote goals, which I don't know if we're going to call them goals. I'm not sure of that yet either. We'll figure that out within the next week or two. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please press that like button. And if you have yet to subscribe, I hope you would also consider subscribing to my channel. That is all I have for now. I hope you have a good rest of your day, evening, or night. Until next time, bye.